On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Cassie Brown. She is the VP of Engineering at Bitly. We're going to be talking about customer experience and, more importantly, the relationship between the customer, success, and engineering teams. We're going to be talking about feedback loops, improving triage. Really, all this is, the real end goal is adoption and usage, and I think we've got a lot of stuff to unpack. I'm excited to have you on, Cassie. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Before we start, let's have you tell everyone what Bitly does, just to make sure everyone is familiar with the company. And also, as a VP of Engineering, what are some of the responsibilities you have over there?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So I currently work for Bitly, VP of Engineering. We are a connections platform, a catalyst for connections. We like to make every connection count. Helping you bring closer to your audiences. So we create short links, QR codes, link in bio, or Bitly sites. Yeah, so that's that. And for VP of Engineering, I run the entire core product engineering organization over there. So anyone who touches code that it will be released and used by customers is pretty much all under my purview. And so I'm very excited to kind of chat about customer experience today.
Absolutely. I'm sure people have come across those Bitly links, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. So excited to have you on. So the topic today, we're talking about the customer experience, but really we're kind of focusing on actually the relationship that exists between the customer, the engineering team, and I guess in the middle we mentioned success, and this could be a success team. It could be somebody who's responsible for ensuring delivery, adoption, usage. So it could be different companies have different names for this. I guess when we're just going to start off at the high level, and maybe just to understand how Bitly is set up would be great, just to give context to how you view this relationship. That'd be a good starting point.
Yeah, of course. So I actually will just kind of go back a little bit and say I have worked at several different companies actually in a customer-facing role previously. And so, yes, they're called all kinds of things and have different structures. Bitly specifically, we do have account managers as well as support. And then most recently, a technical services engineer that's like tier 3 support that kind of comes between engineering and support and account managers to kind of bridge that gap, so to speak, to bring us a little bit closer to each other, which I'm pretty proud of because we didn't do that as well in the past. So that's been a pretty revolutionary and helped us really bring the engineering organization a little bit closer to the pain points and also the good things that customers experience.
So I guess there's, when we're talking about the customer, in the end, we need feedback. We need to understand what's happening. When we talk about feedback and the process that, a company has, those feedback loops, what I guess, how are you guys set up? What are some of the things that you've seen work? You've been in a customer-facing role, which is awesome. So you definitely, have that frontline understanding of being able to be the receiver of that feedback, getting that feedback to other teams. That's really crucial.
Yes, and it works differently everywhere. And I have to say that I think that this is a pain point for not pretty much any company, is really like, how do you perfect that relationship by proxy, especially, we have a product organization who has their roadmaps. We have the customer success, and they're getting information from customer success to build their roadmaps. And then we're getting information from product to build. And then we get the bugs coming from customer success or the defects or things like that. And all of these different inputs that we're getting kind of are not coming directly from the source itself, which can make it really hard to understand exactly why maybe something is wanted or needed, or what the actual issue is, especially if you get some sort of ticket that comes in that makes very little sense and you don't have the connection built with someone in CS or like a person to kind of chat with and work through things. And so making sure that you are not only just the kind of builder that takes all the inputs, but are also actively trying to understand the inputs and maybe even, proactively going out and working with those people. I kind of equate the process that you need to have similar to, a Michelin star restaurant. Engineering is like the chef on the back, and it's their restaurant and they build all of the things, and they also have to care about anything else that happens in the front of the, in the house. And so they get the inputs, they get the receipts of things that people have ordered, but they also need to care and need to hear from, waitresses, servers, bartenders, all of the other things. So they have to care about everything in order to continue to get those stars and those reviews. And so engineering is very similar, right? We have to take all of the inputs and care about it, because at the end of the day, every engineer wants to build something that delights users and that people want to use. And we just can't do that if we don't care about or reach out and care about all of those things.
I love that example. I did watch, we finished season 2 of The Bear, which is a Bao restaurant. And so now I have a complete, when you made that example, I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense. And oddly enough, my wife says, why do you keep, saying yes, chef to me? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just a recent thing. It'll probably get over in a week or two when I stop yelling corner as I move around the house. And my family looks at me like I've lost my mind, which is kind of amusing. But I like that example. It made me kind of think, back to the show. Actually, we won't give away anything about the show, but it's about the standards, right? If you're a Michelin star restaurant, there are standards that the back of house has that they want to put out the best product possible. It is on them. They're building it. It is their quality that's going out, right? So they really ideally never get something sent back, right? They don't put salt on the tables because when they send out, they expect to be seasoned absolutely impeccably. When you're seeing that, and it's interesting because you've been you've worked on the front end of customer support and dealing with the front line, and now you run engineering. When you see that standard, right, and that's the expectation of that quality, the front line obviously sees that those issues coming up. They have to convey that. What happens between that handoff, and how does the back of the house, in this case engineering, react to that? What do they do to ensure that there's learnings to make sure that whatever issue caused that bug or oversight gets corrected?
Right. Yeah. So I love it. So yeah, I also got that while watching The Bear. I was like, oh, it's just like this. So I appreciate that you thought of it as well. But that's a great question. I mean, and I think this is where it's not perfect anywhere. But the big thing that you need to do is make sure when you hear something that it is investigated, that you have a good triage process that kind of shows in the moment that you're looking, you can see it, look at it, understand it, verify that it's an issue, verify that it doesn't hit your standards, right? Like, is this critical? How many people is this impacting? Does this, really ruin the customer experience that we're trying to bring to the table? And so having that in the moment, like as soon as something comes in from any of these inputs, it's like, oh, we need to fix it, or we need to at least, understand it so that we can learn from it and move forward. And some things that you can do, especially afterwards, improve your automation testing to cover those use cases. Obviously, customers are using your product in a way that you didn't assume when building the automation and test cases. So making sure that you're doing, test driven development ahead of time as well. And then, we try to push all of our engineers here, like when they are fixing bugs, is to do test driven development. Write the test case first, write that before you fix the bug and then go from there. So you can really have a good understanding of it.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you want to fold in those learnings. When I guess maybe you could put yourself back in the role back in the technical support role, the front end role, a customer facing role, and kind of view your role now as the VP of engineering. Obviously, anything that gets conveyed secondhand, there's interpretation happening before it gets to whoever is getting that information, right? So there is a by proxy relationship. Engineering is typically removed from that initial ticket. Somebody is taking that in, somebody's recognized an issue, it's getting pushed back. Talk about that relationship, right? Like that customer facing component, that whatever we're going to call it, the success team component, and their importance to make sure that what gets conveyed to engineering, it gets handed off very cleanly.
Yes. And this is where, I've had so many different experiences, and I'm very fond of the term, iterating to success, trying new things and trying different things. But the biggest thing I can suggest, and that I have found extremely helpful in all of my past experiences, is when you're on the front lines, you want to gather as much information as possible ahead of time, so that when you send it over, the fence to engineering, they know exactly how to reproduce it, when it happens, how many people it's happening to, what the impact is. Like, that's one thing that I, even at Bitly, had, introduced as part of the bug process that we kind of revamped, was like, what is the impact on this customer, and what is the overall impact, so that we can understand, how to triage it. Like, should it be a critical? Should it be something like, has it hit our standards limit where we're like, oh, this is, we got to stop everything until this is fixed. So kind of really putting together like a template that makes sense for you. That's like, all right, I've got to have this information before I push it over. And that way they have all like everything possible they could ask for. But then of course, there's might be times where you don't have all the information. So, having that relationship, and, like I've said, in several different companies, there very often you have some way, whether it's a support person meeting with the team of engineers working on particular features or bugs, talking with them through the bugs as they're going through, and backlog grooming and those kinds of things, to understand or get more information from the customers. Or if it's just like, a smaller company, you can just like, Hannah over here entered a bug, so let's talk to her because this isn't super clear on what needs to happen or why this is so important. So just building those relationships is also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you, I guess, if you were to look back over the time since you last held that role to now, has the demands on that success role changed? Has it become more technical as now we have a lot of different components that are cloud related, a lot of different areas of expertise to even build the product? Has that role gotten more technical over the years at all?
In my opinion, it has. If you want it to be, overall, it depends on the product, but you've got to look at the evolution of technology. Everything is connected via APIs today, for example. We've got ecosystems and ecosystems out there, and everything, kind of molds together. And you can't support like a SaaS product and fully understand it without kind of at least, understanding that kind of ecosystem behind it. And that way you can talk to each other in a way, and also your customers, because like sometimes your customers, are either building something, using your product, or they, and you need to be able to talk to them. So I think it depends, but overall, in order to get, looking at logs, for example, to kind of get all of the information, like what happened here with this person at this time, so I can give it to, talk to engineering about it. Those kinds of things, anyone can learn, but I do think it has gotten more technical over time.
I guess I mentioned, the real goal of the product, and I think you've mentioned it, is adoption and usage, and this relationship. You mentioned the engineers want to produce something that marvels, brings a good positive experience to the end user, all those things. As this partnership and success teams are getting more technical, and the engineering teams are obviously more specialized, orchestrating this movement seems like it also has to get complicated, because obviously you have different people, different parts of the stack. I mean, is that also part of the challenge of that, just pure coordination of different, so many different roles now?
100%. Yes. I think that is one of the hardest issues, because at the end of the day, right, we're all on the same team. We all want to delight the users. We want users to be happy. And if we do that, then obviously adoption and usage go way up if we're solving their problems and we're doing it well. So we're all on the same team. But at the same time, people are so busy building new things and doing this and doing that they kind of you have to have set goals of okay, we have SLAs for our customers. You have to resolve things that are, triaged in this way in a certain amount of time, but also service, especially in a multi-service environment where it's who owns this service? And maybe there's services that currently don't have an owner and have been kind of in maintenance mode for 10 years. And they're I don't even know anything about it. So there is kind of that hurdle to jump when you're getting super specialized, and you have a legacy product that maybe not everyone understands exactly. And so figuring out what you do in those scenarios, so really coming up with a good process of okay, how do we do this now? And in fact, this has been a problem that we've had, and we've kind of worked together to come up with what we're calling service stewardship, where we have certain teams that have functional areas that they own of the product, and any bug related to that functional area goes to them. But there's certain services that don't fit in any of those buckets, and also have been kind of in this maintenance mode for a long time. And so we are kind of moving to them around. So you teach your engineers, all your engineers, on different things that they may not have interacted with before. So all of these services kind of get more knowledge sharing as it goes around per quarter. So we kind of are rotating those services. So if a bug comes in Q3 and it's related to one of these services, a certain team knows and expects that they will be taking it up, and they'll work with our technical services engineer to kind of figure out how to solve it with the impact and triage it appropriately.
I like that. I guess one thing I was thinking about was not the pressure, but the responsibility on the engineering team, and how you maybe how you set up a sprint, how the work is broken out. You mentioned somebody's responsible being a steward. How does that get taken into consideration when you're actually doing sprint planning, or however way the work is organized?
Well, there's lots of different ways you can do this, and I've seen in the past where bugs come in and they'll get resolved, kind of basically only critical bugs. I mean, the less mature, I guess, more startup-y. If it's not critical, then it probably just kind of sits in a backlog for a long time. until, we CS or someone else kind of forces like, okay, we've got to make a decision. What are you going to do with this? Because again, it's not enough to just have that feedback loop. You also have to do something with it. And if you don't, then it doesn't feel good for the customer. It doesn't feel good for, the account managers, customer experience team. It doesn't feel good for engineering. Honestly, it doesn't feel good for anyone. So like no one wins in that scenario. So to answer your question, how do you set up the sprint or the team? I've seen it multiple ways. And I think that you can try whatever works best for you, because there isn't a one size fits all. It really depends on the size of your teams, the specialties of the bugs, those kinds of things. You could do like a certain percentage of time that you spend in a sprint is solely dedicated to things that come from customer success, and you prioritize those bugs based on their priorities that are set based on your standards that we talked about earlier. You can also do a certain number of bugs, like you're expected to have a minimum of this many bugs in a sprint. But then if you do that, the kind of the downfall or downside to that is, what if you get a really hard one? and then that ends up taking like 3 or 4 sprints, which I know that has happened to probably anyone in engineering has experienced something like that. So then, if you have that kind of, instance, then it just continues carrying over per sprint, and you can't pick up new things. And also maybe your roadmap work kind of gets pushed to the side because you're still trying to do that. So, there's kind of that piece. And then another thing that I've done recently, and that Bitly did for a few times, is bug sprints, which are kind of a fun way to kind of just let everyone get together and say, all right, we're going to focus on bugs. Like the whole engineering organization is going to just focus on bugs for this sprint, and we're going to crush as many of them as we can. And we've done that in multiple different ways, to make it fun. We've gotten CS even involved, like where they sponsor bugs that have been sitting a while and they want, to be fixed, like those kinds of things, so that it gets like also CS and individual engineers talking and working together on a common goal, which is super cool. So we've done things like that to kind of like really focus a little bit more on CS for a sprint.
Bug auctions. There we go. That's the way. I like this. That's an interesting. That'd be interesting. Cassie, I appreciate you coming on, sharing. It's been awesome. I think your experience kind of covering the area is unique, so I can't thank you enough. Before we wrap up, 2 things. If you were going to ask a future guest for the show to cover a topic you'd like to hear about, what would you like to hear about?
Well, I will say that selfishly, this is kind of silly, but it would be kind of fun to hear about from anyone who builds mods for Minecraft or builds things for Roblox, because my kids are obsessed. Okay. And I think it would be very entertaining episode. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. I've not covered that, but somebody out there knows someone that can talk to the topic. I think it'd be cool. I think a lot of people would like it. I'm curious too, because my daughter also plays Roblox, so I'd be kind of cool to see how that works. How can somebody get a hold of you if they want to just reach out and pick your brain on anything you mentioned? What's a good way?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I check that quite often. So add me, message me. Happy to chat.
All right, then. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, 2 things. 1, if you know someone that can cover the topic that Cassie has mentioned, I think it'd be awesome. I think a lot of people, it'd be a fun episode. I think a lot of people would like it. So please reach out. Love to have you on, or refer somebody that I could have on. That'd be amazing. Secondly, share, like, subscribe, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. That's how the podcast is growing. If somebody else might benefit from the episode, share it with them. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.